I had a near-death experience. I was family trip during COVID in Tobermory, pretty cold. We went with some friends and we were going to be there for 4 or 5 days. So we decided to go to the grotto, kind of typical plan, everybody sitting out, spread out. And a friend of mine goes in, he goes for a swim. He swims all the way to the grotto. He comes back and he says, hey guys, you got to go check out the cave. It's a pretty cool space. So his wife and I are like, okay, let's swim. Let's do it. I haven't, done anything in a while. And she's like, I'm every day at 6 a.m. doing my calisthenics. I'm ready for this. Okay, let's go. So before that, the sun, like the day was sunny, like sunshine, beautiful. The water is crystal clear, pretty cold. And it was like a nice environment, all flat, plateaued. So, okay, nice opportunity to go for a swim. So we go in, jump in, and then we swim like to a first stage where there's like a little entrance, like a first cave kind of thing. We take a breath, we go up, we start checking out all these things. And by that time, I was working in the bank. I was like a 9 to 5 guy. I had all this completely detachment of what you would say the spiritual world, right? Or being in touch with myself. So we start swimming, we do this, we take a break, we breathe, and then when we're going to jump back in to go around the grotto into the cave, it's like the sudden perfect storm align, right? The day got gray, the waves, like the lake started to have waves, which I hadn't seen in my life before, and I used to surf, back in South America before moving to Canada, and I've never seen the behavior of water in this way. So I'm swimming, trying to go, I'm starting to feel numb out, my body's trying to get, a little bit of warmth, but I can't. And then I see my friend's wife coming back with her goggles, all flipped up because of the water chopping. And she's like, I can't swim. I can't feel my body. And I'm like, okay, if she comes to me right now, we're both going to drown. So I tell her, start going towards the rock, right? And go over there and I'll try to see if I can get some help. At this point, I'm thinking I still have energy. I'm going to save the damsel in distress, whatever. So I start to float right at that same spot, and I start to wave to people that are jumping from the cliff, and they don't hear me. I'm like, okay, this is weird. Then I turn around, and there's a boat where the divers that go underneath the grotto with the scuba tanks are also kind of like giving the rules and checking their tanks. And I'm trying to yell at them, but the waves keep on getting higher and higher and higher. At this point, I'm already kind of gassed out. I have screamed like for help, like, I don't know, more than 10 times, and I have no air left. And suddenly my body just crashes. Like I just feel my hand trying to move it as fast as I can. And I see it move in slow-mo underwater. I'm like, okay, this is bad. I can't move. I can't feel my body, and I can't breathe because I'm feeling out of breath, right? I'm gassed out completely. At that point, it just felt like the currents underneath started to pull. And that's the moment where I just kind of panicked. I'm like, okay, I'm going to drown. I'm going to die here right now in the middle of, a family trip, and all these things start to happen and pop through my mind. At that last moment, it was just like, okay, I need to give up because I can't swim anymore, right? It's one of those things where you're like, you come to the realization that you're going to die. Like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to let go of life, right? So at that point, 2 waves hit me, and then I just decide, like, I just go underneath. Go under, and then the struggle begins, right? Like, while I'm coughing, water comes in back and forth. I'm trying to swim, moving my legs inside. Nobody hears. I can't scream at that point because everything that I do is just swallowing water. And there was a moment where I was like, you know what? Just let the fear go away. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Just kind of, it reminded me of those decisions you used to take when you were a child. You're like, okay, let's go ahead and jump from the cliff or do these things. And you're like, you get that courage to just do it. So there was like a courage to just surrender, to just let things happen. And if it's going to happen, it happens. So I think my friend's wife, the last thing she sees when she makes it to the rocks is she turns around and she just sees my hand going under the water, and that's it. Once I was underneath, that's the battle. Like, you start to hold your breath as much as you can, but then there's a point you're going to just lose it, right? You try to breathe in, and then just water comes in. So that was like, for a short second, a battle there of, 10 seconds. After that, it was like a complete silence. Like, I just surrendered to everything. It was a way of, like, even before going underwater, my last words were, I'm sorry. And that was it. I don't know why, but it was something like just looking up and trying to not drown, and I'm sorry. And then I just went down, and it's like, okay, I'm going to die. So during that process, it's like time became still. There was no noise, literally the same sensation of being underwater, but it was deeper than that. And there was just like a pause, and there was no pain. I suddenly stopped feeling everything. Like I didn't feel my body anymore. I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel anything. It was just like a stillness of a moment where mirrors just started to flash, like moments of my life right now, like being with my family when I was a kid, parents, like friends at school, university, like everything was just popping up. And it was a feeling that suddenly I was just overwhelmed with a feeling of love, that I felt like everything was going to be okay, everything was going to be fine. And I wasn't there. Like I was somewhere else, right? And in that somewhere else, I kind of received. Um, it's like you don't hear things, but you just feel them, right? In a way, I don't like. It's hard to explain it. And I felt that there was something greater, that we're here to fulfill the purpose, right? And it's like, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, then why are you here? And then suddenly it was like a very, very subtle voice that just whispered, swim. And then I felt the pull coming out of my, like something just kind of allowed me to feel body again, which was really painful. And that kind of pulled me out of the water and pushed me all the way to allow me to swim again to like the rocks where I barely make it, get up there. And then I kind of passed out throwing up water for a while, and people came. It was like a big thing. I was purple, hypothermia, everything else. And I do remember that one of the most shocking things was to come back to the body, because I felt a pain that I haven't felt. It's like somebody would have shoved my soul into the meat suit, right? And it was feeling so like so many nerves, right? Like things that you would never feel before coming back online. And it was horrible. It was like, oh no, I want to go back to that space where I was right now, where you feel just completely like empty of everything. You're just in the moment of like, it's like an eternal moment, something hard to explain. So after that, a lot of things started to happen in my life. I think people call it in the spiritual community, spiritual awakening, right? It's like becoming aware of like, what am I doing in my life? What is this message that I receive? What should I be doing? And at that time, I had stopped doing everything that I did with music. I had stopped kind of like being part of groups because of the pandemic situation. There was a lot of segregation and a lot of fighting and division. So all that caused me to kind of go and hide, right? Like in a cave, and just didn't want to be with society. I was kind of affected by everything, even family, right? Like everything was so delicate at that time because everybody had a decision to make, right? It's either this or that, or you believe in this or you believe in that. It was like, so I kind of withdrew myself from the equation. And that, I think, was the worst thing. It's like once things started to flow later on, I noticed that we all have a purpose of being here, and that's just to be. That's just to exchange energy, to be with each other, to share our experience, right? To mirror ourselves and to be part of that. And if we're not doing that, then what's the purpose of being here? Like, we have something unique, everybody, and that's what we all have to share. It's just being there sometimes. And people, it's like, oh, we're human beings, not human doers, right? Just by being is kind of like who your essence is and what you're supposed to be there for the world, and how you can share like the tools and the gifts that you've been granted with, right? So a lot of things happened after that. I thought it was a religious moment, this Holy Spirit coming and this or that. So I joined like a Pentecostal church in Christianity. I was playing with the band and going back to music, like trying to find myself. Then a lot of Bible reading, scripture. That kind of was the first time that I got into reading something that was not your typical, your average reading, right? And I guess because of the different generations and like our parents were very into the belief of things, right? So we always, as kids, want to do the opposite of what our parents do. So I was kind of like the black sheep of the family, rebellious, the only boy, 2 sisters. And I was always doing everything against what was supposed to be the rules. So never had any like I didn't feel attracted to reading things that were religious because I didn't believe in that. But at that point, a friend of mine came. He was part of the church and this or that, and he said something that just crossed my mind, and it was intense. And it was one of the scriptures of the book of John, and that kind of planted a seed. And I'm like, let me debate this. So I started to read, because he's like, well, if you want to debate God, right? And I'm like, oh, so you're bringing Bible things now to talk. That was good, and that kind of opened up the curiosity. So that opened up a Pandora's box, which led me to not only study scripture in the way it was, but let's go to the origins, let's go to the Greek translations, let's go to the Aramaic, or whatever we can find in the past, because there were things that sometimes you start to feel this like this discernment. You start to build it, and you start to kind of question also like the pastors and people. It's like, well, but how about this contradicts this and this or that? And there's no, they never want to give you an answer, like a clear answer about things. And that just kind of awakens more your curiosity into going deeper and figuring out like, okay, let me go to then like the Torah, and let me go to other books that tie this to the Bible, kind of figuring that story. So long story short, I ended up kind of defying the church. I got, this kind of attitude where they're like, if you're not with us, you're against us, right? And anything that you might practice that doesn't align with this, then it's, witchcraft, or it's, it's, what do you call it? It's blasphemy if you're talking about things. So that was a pretty intense trip itself. It was almost like the next 8 months of what happened after the near-death experience. And after that, it just got deeper into going into esotericism, right? Like esoterica. Let's read things that have a little bit more of explanations that align with what I'm resonating with. Like, what's my truth? What do I think about things? Like, what is God for me? What are these things? So it's like I started to explore and go deep in other things. So reading, Sumerian tablets, like Book of Thoth, the Kabbalion, and all these books that talk about, the oneness, the rule of one, and why are we here, and all these things. And then you start seeing kind of like all the flaws that society has with religions and all these beliefs that have been imposed to just, in the end, control. It's just control, power control, right? And they do it through fear. So a lot of that allowed me to start tapping into things that you start going within, right? You start kind of meditating, you start doing other things that bring you closer. So while doing that, reconnecting with music and trying to do these things, my back gave in again. I had 10 years ago a surgery for a herniated disc. Then 10 years later, it happened again. At this point, like my whole sciatic nerve was pinched, like my leg was not working. I had constant pain. Went to the medical system, and that was my other rabbit hole through, the medical system. What's going to happen? Like, can I depend on it? Can I not? And at that time, I was still trusting a little bit certain things, right? Like I knew because of pandemic, there were a lot of red flags here and there. I mean, what's happening with the medical industry, with the pharmaceutical industry? It's like, this doesn't sound okay. This sounds pushed. This sounds this way. So start doing my research, start trying to get a little bit of clarity on who's going to do what doctor's going to treat what. And then for some reason, I get lost within the whole list, right? Like, we can't see you. It's not urgent enough. We're going to back you up. We're going to put you in the waiting list and this or that. So time goes by. It's almost a year now. And then I'm kind of losing everything. My body's completely deformed. Like my back is completely shifted to the right. And at this time, I had only 2 sons at this time. Now I have 3. And our second boy, or our middle child, he's been diagnosed with autism. So my wife was having to deal with her husband kind of decomposing physically and mentally, because my mental health was also getting hit with that, while, she was trying to tend to our son, who had a lot of needs at that time. So it was like, and I was kind of like continuously being put in a corner where I was left alone, right? And I feel that was kind of, I don't know if you got to call it spirit or God or whatever it is, but that was the process, right? Like, and I always remembered like all these scriptures, like from Book of James, that says like, rejoice when you're going through trials and tribulations, because that means that you're kind of going through the next evolution of your spirituality, right? Like you're understanding, you're feeling. And it was really hard to understand it at that moment, because I was going through the whole process. But there was a point where I touched rock bottom, right? Everybody, I think, has to reach to that point until rising back again as the phoenix. And it was like that. It's like complete depression, mental, physical. My body was out. Like as a man, my use of sphincters were kind of being lost because of the pressure of the sciatic nerve. So there was a lot of things going with that. And then it was recently to the near-death experience. So all these things were happening in a very short amount of time. And I wasn't kind of ready for it. We were still working from home. The bank was kind of being very intense of pressuring us to go back to work, but I couldn't even walk. So it was a very intense moment in my life at that point. After that, I decided to just pick up myself and start reading on other things that would allow my body to heal itself. And that's when I went through all the rabbit holes. I went through the rabbit holes of big pharma, of the medical industry, of the control of this or that. And then I hit on the 5,000 years of ancient Eastern medicine that has allowed people to heal themselves. So all the holistic approach. So I started to go down that. So Wim Hof was the first one to hit my, my attention. I'm like, okay, what is this guy doing? How did he do it? He talked about his life, how he, got over the grief of his wife's suicide through the cold therapy. And I'm like, you know what? If he talks about cold being something that heals this or that, I'm going to start doing the cold plunges just to go see if I can reduce swelling in my back and see what happens with the nerve. Because every time I went to the doctor, he just wanted to pump me up with pills. Like, oh, here you have morphine, heroin, whatever it is that'll make you feel better. I'm like, I don't want any of these things. I just want to try to, feel better naturally. And I did like 3 sessions of epidural injections in the back. It was the worst thing that I could have done. Now I'm probably feeling the consequences of that. And it didn't do anything. Like, it didn't take away the pain or whatever it was. So starting to do the breathing therapy, the cold therapy. Then I started to do the breathing that he does. And then that took me to understanding what is all this behind the breathing. Like, everybody's talking about breathing, holotropic breathing. What is it? What's behind it, the science, right? So I started to study on that, figure out what it was, the reset of the nervous system, parasympathetic versus sympathetic, and all these things. Like, okay. And you kind of open the little book of biology there again.
For a guy that didn't like to read, you sure ended up reading a lot over like 3-4 years.
I know. And that's funny because I never wanted to read when I was a kid. Like, it's just action doing this or that. And then these were my years where I was like, okay, so now it begins. Now I have to start really understanding what's there. And then internet will always give you like a very short version of things. It won't give you, the actual meat until you go and you start looking and you start, searching and he who seeks will find. And that's very, very there. So I started also going back into my South American roots and trying to see what was calling me regarding plant medicine, right? I'm okay, if I need to bring my mental state into a specific, place where I have to connect with something higher, I know that I've been there when I drowned. So can I do that again? So breath allows you to do that. And you can do it, let's say, as Wim Hof says, you can get high on your own supply. Because when you breathe with these breathing techniques, what happens to your body is that you're stimulating the cerebral spinal fluid that goes up your spine, goes all the way to your head, and it hits your pineal gland. When it does that for a certain amount of, minutes, it's going to start segregating what is DMT, dimethyltryptamine, right? Which is the same component that the ayahuasca has and other plant medicines out there have. But we have it, we produce it. So everything that's in nature, it's in us. And that's when you start understanding all these hermetic laws that as above, so below, as within, so without. Because everything is here. So DMT is what the brain kind of releases when we're born, when we dream, and when we die. But you can control the production of it when you're doing breath work. You can consciously make it while you're breathing. And you're doing these exercises, diaphragmatic breathing, pushing your stomach to the back. And that kind of pumps the cerebral spinal fluid all the way to the top. And that starts to segregate. So when you get into that, let's say, state, you're allowing the brain to open the subconscious or the doors to the subconscious where you can actually see all the things that you lock up there, which are basically trauma.